I am joined by Miranda and Delia, so I will let you two introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I am the SVP of Media at Oxford Road. I oversee all media activities from media plan design to investment strategy, negotiation and execution. I've been buying podcasts for 13 years, so before some of the biggest players existed or even started selling podcasts. And during that time, I've had the pleasure of launching some of the most notable brands in the space, like ZipRecruiter and Shopify, and work with some amazing advertisers now, like Masterclass, Indeed, Oracle, and so many more.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Delia D'Ambra. I am a host and creator for audiochuck Podcast Network. I host 3 shows, CounterClock, Park Predators, and Dark Arenas, and I have not been in the podcasting space for 13 years. I've been doing this now full-time for about 6 years. So, yeah, it's been a really, really cool journey. And, yeah, if you're a true crime listener, make sure you listen to our shows.
Absolutely. Thank you both. So, Miranda, as you just told everyone, you have been a mainstay in the industry for quite some time. And you are by far one of the most savvy podcast buyers. I'm going to give you that title. Tell us a little bit more about your background and what your role is like today.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's really overseeing all media activities, and so we've got a pretty thorough planning process. So when an advertiser comes to us with budget, we work with them very closely in identifying their goals, objectives, who they're trying to reach, and then using our very rigorous planning process and a lot of the data that we have in-house in terms of performance and audience. We put together their media schedules and work with amazing partners like yourself at SiriusXM to put deals together for our advertisers.
Amazing. Delia, you have such a unique foray into podcasting, and it's really connected to your deep passion of storytelling. So take us on a journey about how podcasting became the medium for you to share these important stories.
Yeah, so I came from a background in print and broadcast journalism, and so I was in broadcast for a number of years, loved it, loved the investigative nature of it, but really I knew pretty quickly that there was going to be a cap on the amount of time you could give to a story, how much time that story would have to air, and really, as I began to think, okay, what am I going to do long game-wise, I wanted to find a medium that was going to allow, interviewees the time to tell their stories and to let the stories breathe and to actually try and make a change with covering crime, right? And so I think when it happened to coincide with when podcasts were really on the rise, that kind of sweet spot of 2016 to 2018 time frame. And so, yeah, I just kind of went all in. I created CounterClock, and then Ashley Flowers listened, and our minds met, and she had the vision for audiochuck, and I said, this is it. This is the thing I've been looking for. And so from there, we've gone on to make a number of shows together, and whether we're hosting them or other hosts are coming on board. And yeah, I just think that kind of new space of telling true crime in a very caring way has just been something that I thought, wow, looking back now, I don't think I would have had in any real way that was satisfying. And this has just been such a really cool journey for that.
Yeah, that's great. And when you get a cold email from Ashley Flowers, you answer.
Yeah.
Miranda, when we talk about true crime and its evolution in the space, have you had challenges convincing clients of its brand safety?
Yeah, so true crime is such a powerful tool, one of the most powerful tools in podcasting to reach that female audience. Just a couple of years ago, it felt impossible to find any scale for advertisers looking to reach that female audience. And so true crime has really been a savior in that regard. And advertisers recognize the value. They know that it can perform. But when we do see hesitancy to engage with a genre, which is rare, we, approach the brand safety conversation the way we would with any genre, acknowledging that the audience is choosing to be there, but also helping them understand it's not black and it's not white. There are true crime podcasts out there that sensationalize these crimes. They, are there to fulfill people's morbid curiosities, and some of the commentaries there for shock value. And then you have podcasts like Delia's, hosted hosted by a professional journalists with real integrity behind the mission to help find advocacy and justice for these victims and their families. And you cannot put those two very different types of shows in the same bucket. So we use tools like Podscribe and Seeker to help differentiate between the two and just have those conversations with our partners.
And Delia, I mean, you both have touched on this about, audiochuck's commitment to a new version of true crime and what that is. You talked about other true crime shows that might sensationalize the content. Tell us a little bit more about audiochuck's mission and why you wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just looking at that victim-centered storytelling and really on a personal level, seeing people and seeing the subjects that you're telling stories about, but also the people that are coming around and maybe asking, doing outreach and saying, hey, like, this is my loved one's case. Can you please help us, right? So I think approaching that in that way with a real caring, right? Like, so when I do a season of CounterClock, like, I am with these families on a journey, right? And so I'm bringing them a skill set that I have to truly help try and find answers, right? And to help them even, potentially navigate the criminal justice system, right? Like trying to help them learn along the way while also revealing the process of reporting to the audience. And I think that's really seen. I know the Deck podcast for audiochuck, there's a team of reporters, again, professionals that are doing this, but they are working every day with loved ones, family members, law enforcement that's like, we need your help. So I think, really taking that approach, it's just such more of a deeper dive and it's much more fulfilling work, but it also is like actually making tangible differences in the communities. And so that to me, to be able to do that in media is just such a rare thing. And so you definitely I wanted to be a part of that.
It's so touching and compelling because the work you do is so important. And I think, audiochuck puts its money where its mouth is. You guys have donated over $5 million to advocacy organizations that help victims and their families. So it's truly incredible to see that work being done. Miranda, I think we would probably both agree why Delia has been able to be a mainstay in podcasting amongst a, very cluttered environment where there's, a lot of shows, a lot of content. But in your opinion, why someone like her has been able to hold so strong and continue to grow and evolve in this industry?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to four things. So the first is just the level of engagement. So if you've had the pleasure of listening to Delia's podcast, you know how dynamic it is. Delia is hosting, but you get to hear the different perspectives from, different people involved from then, from now. And it's almost like the listener is forced to become the detective themselves. And that requires active listening. I know when I'm listening to the podcast, if I'm cooking or driving or doing something else, and something else catches my attention for 35 seconds, like I'm lost. I have got to go back and rewind. And so with that is just such an unrivaled, deeper form of mental engagement, which, first of all, is a great opportunity for advertisers to capitalize on. And then the second thing is just the consistency in the quality of the content, but also consistency in the engagement throughout the entire journey. So even after that podcast ends, really giving listeners a platform to share feedback, communicate tips, questions, comments, concerns, and I think it's that really helps build the community aspect of it and help spark the activism and the participation, which is the third reason. And then I think lastly, and you did a great job explaining, is just the integrity of the content.
Yeah, you touched on so many great points there, and I agree with all of them. It's been really exciting to watch Delia in the space and how she engages and interacts with her audience as a storyteller. But you also talk about your personal life too, which really, you become a public persona. And, I'm curious how your personal life plays into your storytelling and also how that translates with your audience.
Yeah, so my husband is running around here somewhere. They travel with me everywhere, and really to do this work, right? To do a limited series that is multiple episodes covering a very complicated case that I've invested time with, and people have given me the blessing of their time, right? Like, that requires travel. That requires coordination with multiple people in multiple ways. And so, yeah, I mean, I have now gone on this journey. I think we're going into season 7 of CounterClock. I know because I've been writing it already. Is that, that's years of my life, right? So they're evolving. The listeners, the audience is evolving with me. And I think they're seeing me become a mother. They're seeing me get married. They're seeing new shows being created. And they know that as a host and creator, that takes time and energy and a group of people to come around, right? And partners like SiriusXM, right? So I just think that is such a really cool thing. And yeah, it's an absolute personal investment. I would not be doing this if I did not care and I didn't want to do this. It is not just a job. I think it's amazing that it is a job, right? And be grateful for that. But yeah, my personal journey is in everything. You see tendrils of it in every bit of audio I put out. You're going to maybe hear some baby crying and a little bit of, but it's all part of the product.
Absolutely. And there's been a lot of conversation here at Podcast Movement over the last couple of days about social and video and all of these other channels that creators can utilize to engage with their audiences further. I've personally seen you engage with your audience a lot on social. And how has that changed over, the past few years in podcasting for you? Do you feel like you've built a stronger community because you can speak to them more intimately outside of the podcast and social, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love how social media has really sort of been such an in tandem thing now with the audio product. I think specifically as a host and creator, like being able to get that sort of immediate feedback and to build that community. I think as a journalist, it really builds trust, right? And it works sort of twofold as a transparent lens, right? Like, this is how I do my work. This is how the process goes. This is how fact gathering happens. This is what happens when things go wrong, right? And I think having that vulnerability with your audience in that way, it builds a lot of trust. And I think for me, I just love how social media is this conduit for engagement as far as the listeners saying, hey, we want to sign this petition. Hey, we want to give to this family. Hey, we want to give to Season of Justice, the nonprofit Ashley founded. Like, I think that is just such a cool conduit because it does go beyond just the listening and going, oh, that would have been a cool thing. It's like, well, here's the link, here's the whatever. So I think that is such an amazing thing. And then with video, I mean, if there is a visual component to the sort of documentary type storytelling that kind of goes along with what I do, all the better, because that's awareness for the case. So I just think that you can marry all of those things together in a really beautiful way.
And you mentioned trust, and I think trust is something that you have built over time and continue to with your authenticity and your commitment to the work. But trust is such an important part of the equation for advertisers as well, Miranda. So you primarily work with advertisers who are seeking performance metrics in order to continue investing in a show. So how have you seen true crime perform for some of your advertisers, and what do you think that looks like in the future as well?
Yeah, so I think true crime is such a broad genre, and there are a lot of variabilities that go into the performance of a campaign. I think, first and foremost, we're talking about trust, engagement, and vulnerability. I think having that with your audience and having advertisers kind of tap into that and kind of leverage that is foremost. But again, a lot of different variation. For some podcasts, we might see that, the subgenre of conspiracy theories and paranormal activities works really well. For others, it could be psychology and serial killers. The same goes for the professionalization of the content. For some, we see that the more produced, the scripted work better than the casual, conversational in nature. So it really depends. But we can see true crime even work, which might be shocking for like B2B advertisers or even advertisers looking to reach a male audience, though typically on a very wide and efficient run of network campaign. The beauty about podcasting today is that there's so many ways to buy, and that just gives us that many more optimization levers that we can use to enhance performance. I will say kind of generally what we see is when a podcast has a very high ad load, particularly with like brand spots, those generally don't work as well. And so we either will, buy those as part of run of network or not at all.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that you have to consider when looking at performance. Delia, how do you decide what advertisers to work with, especially in an environment with such highly sensitive content?
Yeah, I mean, I really look at where brands also have that awareness of understanding that it is sensitive content, right? And I think a big piece of it is, I know a lot of wellness partners we've done campaigns with, right? Like there's a mental wellness piece to this work for the creator, for the listener, for the subjects, right? And I think that really is a big part of it. And I think too, I've said this before to you, Kelli, like to do this work, to have the stamina, personal care, right, is like huge. And then, you bring in that whole travel piece to it, that just the widespreadness of we're going to where the story is. We're going to where the heart of this crime occurred. And so I look for brands, when they approach us, I'm like, this just works. It connects, it works. It's going to connect with the audience on so many different levels. And so being aware of that. And then, if it's brands that I think like, okay, this may be a little different than what we've approached. Like, okay, now let's look at where it's going to be situated in the content, right? And like even coming down to like the actual like episode, like where is it, is this going to be jarring to go from this story to suddenly this thing? So I think there's a lot of thought that goes into that. I know for audiochuck and like again with folks that sort of are the bridge between us and advertisers. To me, I love being part of those conversations and really feeling like, hey, I know this best, the story best, your field best. Let's figure out where we can meet in between.
And if I could just interject, and not to keep talking about your podcast, but like, I just want to call you out because you do an amazing job. Like when I'm listening, sometimes I don't even notice. I'm like, wait a second, am I listening to an ad now? And so I think another key to performance is just making sure that the ad is not disruptive to the experience, but additive to the experience. And it just feels natural for them to listen to it and make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, and I think as the network that represents you on the sales side, we have such a responsibility to listen to you as to where those ads should be placed, what ads are going to make the most sense, because it all connects together at the end of the day and really ties back to the audience, because we don't want the audience to tune out. We don't want to deter them from the experience, whether it's the content that they're listening to or the ad. So you are talking about really important stories, and your audience is there with you the whole way. They are hanging on to your every word. They are passionate, and they want to know what happens. They want justice as well. Talk to us a little bit about the passion of your audience and how they experience this content. And I mean, I'm sure you hear from them a lot. I'm sure that they're, jumping in on the cases alongside you. So.
Yeah, and I think the really, really cool thing, right, like I always say, like at the end of every, season or episode, those that came to us, and I know this is across the audiochuck, like whenever it was a write-in, right, as a case suggestion from someone who was like, hey, help us, at the end of the day, if they are happy. Like as journalists, we don't initially work for the people, right? Like, but we have that integrity in our work, right? We're not PIs, for example. But like as long as they're happy at the end of the day, that's like a huge reward. And I think that listeners know that we put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we storytell. And I think that they get very passionate about that. And so then they are drawn to that cause. They see that relatability. And so I love, like, whether it's actual physical mail or emails, like I know at the end of every season of CounterClock, we do like an email call out of like, what are your burning questions? Like where, there's constant reporting still going on. Like what are things that, you can contribute that maybe could give us some help or leads or whatever. And like, I think that is such a cool way, and the amount of, hundreds of emails that come in are just really, really cool. And I know like the case suggestion form for Crime Junkie is like in the tens of thousands, and it's really cool to see that people get as passionate about bringing awareness to things that truly deserve that, and deserve that in the right way, which is what, we've been talking about.
Absolutely. And we've touched on kind of this multi-channel approach, from your perspective, Delia, and what video and social looks like for you. But Miranda, I'm really curious as a buyer, how you see those extensions and their value and how you're evaluating them as a media buyer today.
Yeah, so also a lot of variation. With sometimes depending on the creator, the way that it's integrated, it's a difficult case to make from a performance perspective, but we're considering them more and more just because of the fragmented way people are consuming media these days. It's almost expected that the content is, available wherever they need to be. And so with that, the advertisers kind of need to go along with that journey. With video specifically, I mean, like 9 times out of 10, it's a slam dunk, and it works really well, just because I think the highly engaging form of the medium.
That's great. Now, as we look at the entire ecosystem of true crime, what would you like to see more of as true crime evolves in the space, audiochuck and beyond?
Yeah, so one of the things that I love is just the diligence that is put into vetting advertisers for host reads, which just, it contributes to the matchmaking experience, and it makes it more authentic. But what I would say, and it's not just for true crime, but really kind of in general, just even half that diligence when it comes to the brand spots and the ad load in the podcast, because it impacts the listening experience, and quality matters. Creators put their blood, sweat, and tears into creating this content. And if you inundate the listeners with too many ads, they're just going to skip them or go somewhere else. And we see this very clearly in performance. And so just kind of understanding that, like, if the ads are stacked really high, the CPMs are going to have to be cheap. And I just feel that undervalues some of the really great content out there.
Now, Delia, for you, from your perspective, when you look at the true crime genre, obviously we're a little biased up here, and you're with the creme de la creme of true crime networks. But what do you want to see more of in the space? What do you want to hold others accountable for in the genre?
I just think, not taking away that kind of sensationalist approach to storytelling. I think it's so easy, the kind of the low-hanging fruit, I think, in the true crime space, and really, just really trying to do something that is hopefully making change. Like, if you're not bringing something to change it and you're only taking, right, like that's just eroding to the soul, I think, and I don't want the soul of true crime podcasts to, continue to erode, right? So I definitely think I would love to see sort of more creators that are very driven by the product, more companies that are driven to partner along those creators and give them a shot, so to speak. So I look forward to that. And then I also really think that, there's a really cool trend and shift in the documentary space being a little shaken up by some of the IP and some of the really powerful stories that just are incredible in audio. And I think because they are incredible in audio, they can be incredibly well done in a documentary visual space, because they started in the right place, right? Like, they started in the right creative mindset, and to carry that through to video versus, trying to do that in reverse. I think there's going to be some powerful things, hopefully, in that.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting because audiochuck is truly a podcast-first platform and came up in the audio space, in the truest form. But there might be some video opportunities that are coming in the future, and would love to hear a little bit about what audiochuck is looking to do with video, and then what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, I know we just did a specific episode on the YouTube for a case on the deck, right? And Ashley had this vision of, this story just struck me so personally and so powerfully. Like, I want to do basically just a 1 hour or so deck podcast episode, but we're going to do it, and we're going to bring in the visuals that go with this case, because again, a lot of these folks that kind of open themselves up to working with us, they provide things that we realize, okay, this could be a powerful visual, a respectful thing, like we're not doing anything that's disrespectful. And I think that's a perfect example of where, that can go, right? Again, because it's starting from an authentic, real place and a genuine place. And so, what's on the horizon? I'm sure, Ashley's always got stuff up her sleeve, because she's thinking, with her heart first, and we all are. that are doing this in this way. And so I definitely think that's a really good example of where things can translate and really hit really well. And then, the response from the Crime Junkie Nation on that, and I just think is so positive, and that engagement just maintains all the way through. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing in a genre that predominantly has not had that, and in many ways still doesn't. But I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting because last year Ashley took the Deck Investigates on tour, so she did a live tour of a case, and I had an opportunity to go see it because I was really curious about what that would look like visually,
and
to
she
be
did
in the
so
audience.
Beautifully, and the family, for the family of that victim, Darlene Hulse's daughters, to be there in the audience and to be on board from start to finish, I just think, is such an amazing. I was able to go to one of the shows as well, and it's super powerful, and people are not just coming for the live show experience. They're coming because they are in this Crime Junkie, the Deck, CounterClock, whatever. They are in this because they've been in it for years with us, and they want to continue on with us. But that live show is just so amazing, and I would love to see more of that in creators that are really thinking in that way.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, just about the work that you do, the commitment to the families, Darlene's daughters were physically present at the show. I think they came to 2 shows.
Yeah, I got to meet them backstage, and what an honor. And to have that, not only that blessing, right, from them, but to know that all of this is in an effort to get Darlene's case, hopefully solved, right? But to get a petition going, and I know that petition is, well into the tens of that. It's not over 100,000 signatures. So that is such a way of utilizing the platform, right, to then say, hey, let's try and make a difference. So super cool to see that and be a part of, the thing that made that the way it was.
And Miranda, being in such a performance-driven space, the live event for your clients probably traditionally isn't really a space where you get high ROI, but how do you view live events? Is that something that you've ever considered for your clients?
It certainly has, and there have been cases where, depending on the scope of the relationship, and especially if we've got an existing partnership with the talent and we know that it's performing, it's something that we definitely would consider. I think, it's a great idea. It's these creators, they have to meet the audience with where they are, and it's up to the advertisers to kind of come along that journey with them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to be in that environment if you're in the show, if you've got that relationship. And the audience, in my experience, has been excited to see brands show up there. So I think that's also really unique. Well, we're almost out of time, but I think that it would be really interesting to hear from both of you, just generally, what excites you about the future of podcasting and the space overall, and what you would like to see.
Yeah, so the first thing that really excites me is just the rise of podcast listening globally. I think there's a real opportunity to take some of the best practices that we have here and, blend in the cultural nuances and scale them into the different markets. I know true crime in particular is actually a top genre in several foreign markets. And then the second thing is lately, just within the last 6 to 8 months, we've been hearing more directly from creators themselves that they want more connection and collaboration with advertisers, which we love hearing that, in an effort to really deepen the partnerships, broaden the relationships, so that they can customize and personalize creative and test across multiple different platforms, which again, I think makes a lot of sense kind of given the fragmented way people are consuming media these days.
I would say, I'm biased to the limited series, right? That's what I kind of started doing and helped create several of those. I really do think there's a powerful space for those, limited series, 8 to 10 to 12 episodes to really deep dive. I think the analytics would show. I think the Edison Consumer Report audiochuck did with Edison Research is showing that there's a demand for that deeper dive quality product, and I really do hope to see that spread. And then, like I said earlier, there's some really, really amazing, strong storytelling, original documentary type things that I think could be birthed from that, and we've seen a little bit of that. So I definitely would look forward to seeing that in the future, because I think that there's a really good space for that to live in a good ecosystem. Yeah.
maybe some of your IP one day will be living on in perpetuity, and we'll
never
get to
know.
see
You
it
never
come to life. Well, thank you both so much. What a wonderful conversation, and thank you everyone for joining us today.